Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world coming up. It's 1 year since the US Supreme Court overturned Roe v Wade, thus removing a federal right for women to end their pregnancies. We take a look at how America has changed in the wake of that historic decision. Also, the global backlash against women's rights and who is indeed behind it. I'll be talking shortly to Clara Dereudre, a co-author of a French report which offers recommendations on how to counter the backlash. And overcoming multiple barriers, the determined women entrepreneurs of Iraq, operating in a country where female workforce participation rate is just over 10%. But first, and it's been a year since the landmark overturning of Roe v Wade in the US, a Supreme Court decision meaning abortion is no longer a federal constitutional right, with women's access to the procedure increasingly being determined by geographic boundaries. Those who live along the east and west coasts can get abortions, but women in parts of the south and the Midwest cannot. We take a look at how America has been impacted since that dramatic decision.
In Washington, D.C., abortion is legal at all stages of pregnancy. Dr. Serena Floyd helps women access the procedure.
So we see on average about 20 to 25 patients on a given procedural day, and they come in first through our internal waiting area, after which time we go ahead and bring them in for their ultrasound to be able to date their pregnancy.
Dr. Floyd provides both medication and surgical abortions. A year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which guaranteed the federal right to an abortion, she has seen an increase in patients from all over the country.
At this point, about 20 states have had bans or significant restrictions passed, and what that's translated into is a banning of abortion for 1 in 3 individuals who are needing the care. Those who are disproportionately being affected are those individuals who are Black individuals, Indigenous people, people of color. But we're also talking about those who live in rural communities, those who are living in poverty.
About 25 million women of childbearing age now live in states where access to abortion was restricted in the past year. Brittany House feels lucky to have been able to get the abortion she needed.
I was 21 years old, making $50,000 a year. That's not a lot to take care of a baby. I had 3 other roommates, so lived in a 3-bedroom apartment. And again, I was in a intimate partner violent relationship. Every state, every person is under attack. And so again, I am grateful to be in an area in which my rights are protected, but we never know, that could be changed at any point in time.
At least 14 states already have full bans in effect. This number could grow as 6 states are pushing for more restrictive laws that are currently blocked by courts. And the Supreme Court could also soon have to rule on access to medication abortion.
It makes me question the signage that's on the building, equal justice under law, because I do not have the same equal justice as a man. They don't have any laws that are governing over their body or their autonomy, so it makes me question the legitimacy of the court.
While more than 60% of Americans support access to abortion, the issue is still expected to be central in the 2024 campaign, with Democrats vowing to protect what they see as a fundamental right, while Republicans push for a nationwide ban on abortions.
And government ministers are facing calls to step up and decriminalise abortion in the UK, this after a woman was jailed for terminating her pregnancy. The 44-year-old was imprisoned for 28 months after lying to order pills to end her pregnancy during lockdown. The sentencing comes as another woman in Malta was also charged in court for having an abortion in a rare enforcement of the country's total ban on terminations. Now, here's a bit of depressing news. 9 out of 10 people of all genders have a bias against women. This according to the Gender Social Norms Index published by the UN Development Programme. The figure remaining unchanged from data collected more than a decade ago. It found that half of people in 80 countries believe men make better political leaders, 40% believe men are better business executives, and a quarter believe that it's justified for men to beat their wives. So with this in mind, a report on the global backlash against women's rights was recently published here in France by Equipop and the Jean Jaurès Foundation. Joining me now is its co-author, Clara Dereudre. Clara, thank you so much for coming in. Firstly, how would you define backlash in this context and why is it so prominent?
Backlash is not a new phenomenon, but it's now recurrent. The concept was created by American author Susan Faludi in 1991 and refers to the reaction of conservative movements to progress in women's and LGBT rights.
Qu'on peut voir pour les droits des femmes et les droits LGBT.
And in recent years, it has been even stronger with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has exacerbated vulnerabilities and enabled the anti-rights movement to attack women's and LGBT rights.
Is it just the far right that's driving this campaign?
Ce n'est pas seulement l'extrême droite.
It's not just the far right. The far right plays a big role in this, obviously, in its movement, but they're more complex than that. It's a mixture of state and non-state actors. We have far-right political groups, religious extremist groups, NGOs, and donors from all over the world, all united behind a common agenda.
De la planète. Et qui se réunissent donc derrière un agenda commun.
Who's funding this?
As far as funding is concerned, it's rather complicated to know in detail who finances these movements. We have religious movements in the United States that raise a lot of money and fund these movements. There's money coming from Russia. There's money coming from private foundations in Europe, including the Le Jeune Foundation, which helped finance the Manif pour tous in France, the anti-gay marriage movement.
Now, you focus on 12 countries in your report, but the interesting thing is that Sweden is one of them, and it's a nation that for so many years has been seen as a leader in feminist policy. What happened?
It's true that Sweden was the first to adopt a feminist foreign policy agenda. But since October 2022, a right-wing and far-right coalition has come to power, and as soon as it came to power, it rejected this feminist foreign policy. Words are very important, and the fact that they dropped this expression means they also dropped gender equality in all these policies.
So what can governments do about this?
The main thing we're asking governments to do is to fund feminist organizations, to fund even more feminist organizations, to counter these anti-rights movements, which themselves have a lot of money. Feminist organizations are doing excellent work all over the world to counter these anti-rights movements. But with more resources, they can do it even better, and with the support of all those states that have feminist foreign policies.
Clara, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To Iraq now, and as we've reported before, the country is marking 20 years since the fall of Saddam Hussein, yet the nation remains unstable and Iraqi society is still highly conservative. Working women are few and female entrepreneurs even more of a rarity, but our team on the ground met the few who are still pushing through regardless.
In a southern suburb of Baghdad, Yusra El-Hasnawi has embarked on an unusual business venture for Iraq, cultivating white mushrooms.
At the market, you get a quarter of a kilo for 2,500 Iraqi dinar, so it's expensive, and I could never find the kind I wanted.
This 27-year-old IT graduate changed career over a year ago to grow mushrooms, a challenge in such a hot, dry climate.
I once had a problem with irrigation that killed the mushrooms. It affected me badly, but I told myself, no problem, we have to find the mistakes and then we solve them.
Determined to be independent, she's continued to develop her project, but remains cautious.
So I told myself I'll also work as a teacher, which means I'll be working from 8 a.m. to midday. I'll work on the project for the rest of the day.
Yusra already has some big clients, but now hopes to develop her company to the point where she can compete with imported produce. In Iraq's distant south, Thuraya al-Rashid was inspired by the traditional local henna culture. She started transforming the henna into hair care products.
Depending on a client's demands, I add herbs and oils for growing and coloring hair. I make a different mixture for each order.
27-year-old Taraya trained to be an engineer and works as a safety supervisor in the oil industry.
I was suffering from hair loss, so I was advised to try henna. I like the idea because in El Fao we have the best type of henna. I can help other people and myself while preserving the henna heritage.
For the moment, she sells her creations to a few customers on social media. One day she'd like to buy land, but the culture where she lives is very conservative. Women cannot buy land alone. The future of her business is uncertain.
She will depend on her husband's decisions. There are men around here who don't want women to work outside the house.
It depends on my choice of husband, a man who supports women. I have to choose well.
And that's all for this edition. We'd love to hear your suggestions for the 51%, so do get in touch via Facebook, Instagram or Twitter, and you can catch our previous episodes on our website. So until our next show, bye for now.